chords. What is a chord? A chord is when you take multiple notes and you play them at the same time. In this case, I have a C major chord. You can take any arrangement of notes and you can play them at the same time, and you can technically have a chord, but it's going to take some steps to kind of understand what's going on there. So let's start with the most common type of chords, which is known as a triad. A triad is what you just saw there, was that C major chord, known as a C major triad. It's called a triad because it has a third, and then it has another third, and they're played together, or in other words, people often say that they're stacked on top of each other. If you look on the left side and you see the sheet music, you see the notes are stacked on top of each other, making that C major chord. So throughout this video, I'm going to go over stuff here on the left side on the piano, and I'm going to explain what I'm doing, but I made this picture over here on the right to help you out. So first of all, we have examples of triads, and in dark blue, we have the major, in red, we have the minor, in orange, we have the diminished, and in light blue, we have the augmented. Over here, we have different chords that all fit into the category that they're with. At the upper right-hand corner of this page, you see that I wrote the letters A through G twice, and I wrote 1 through 7. These numbers aren't relevant other than the fact that they're showing you the relationship between A and C is 1, 2, 3, and also from a B to a D would also be that 1, 2, 3, and it's just kind of showing you the numbers to make this a little more visual and easier for you if you're a beginner. This will probably help you wrap your head around this a little more. And then under that, here's a key. The key is showing you on the left-hand side here that these are all triads. So we have a 1, 3, and a 5. I'm going to explain what all this means, but we have a 1, 3, and a 5 on all these, so just know that they're all 1, 3, and 5s. They're triads, and with that, they have a different amount of semitones, which then makes them a different type of triad, which then has a different symbol. Okay, and I'm going to explain all this, but then over here at the upper left-hand corner of the same page, we have the chromatic scale, which I have 2 videos for you. Music Monday 5 goes over intervals. I'll put that in the description, and that will walk you through what intervals are, because we're going to be dealing with thirds here. So if you don't know what a third is, it would be good to check out that video, or just look up what a third is in music. And then the next thing would be my Music Monday number 4, which is important musical topics. In that, you'll find a section, I have it labeled through time, that I describe the chromatic scale, and I'm going to briefly explain what it is in this video. Okay, so the chromatic scale, as you can see, the notes C, D, E, F, G, A, and B all line up, top and bottom. But there's also notes like C sharp, which lines up with D flat. D sharp lines up with E flat. So just know, in simple terms, let's start with C to D. So C to D, we have those 2 notes, okay? So if I want to go up a sharpened version of C, there's this black note, which can be thought of as C sharp, because it's not D, but it's that black note in the middle of C and D. So a sharpened version of C would be C sharp, but also if I'm at D and I want a flattened version of D, there's that same note in the middle, which expresses a D flat. So this is known as an enharmonic, which in simple terms means that it has the same sound, but it looks different. So it's the same note, has the same sound, C sharp, D flat, same note, but what's happening is they're used in different contexts, so they're going to be called different things. So the chromatic scale over here is essentially going to be going up the same exact progression, and you can choose whether you want to look at it in the sharp, or you want to look at it in the flat, or if you want to look at both, they're right above and below each other, and they line up. So every time you see, let's see a F sharp, that's the same thing as a G flat, like an A flat, same thing as a B flat, same sound. Okay, so now I'm going to discuss some things to help us understand why we have the major, minor, diminished, and augmented, and how we can wrap our head around what all these actually mean. So we'll start with a major triad, C, E, and G. So a major triad means that we have a major third and a minor third, and we put those on top of each other. Okay, and that's a major triad. So I'm going to go over this pretty slowly and pretty simply in the beginning, and just know if it's going a little too slow, it'll pick up a little more later on. I'm just going to try to explain this as simple as I can for anyone who is very new to this. So first off, we have two thirds. So we have a C to E, which is a third, and an E to a G, which is a third. So to build a third, we're going to think about just looking at the natural notes. The natural notes are these: A through G, no sharp, no flat. So you can kind of use this key to help you as I go over this on the piano. So if I want a third, I'm going to start with C, then I'm going to call that C my 1, then I'm going to go up D, which is my 2, and then E, which is my 3. So if I just take my 1 and my 3, now I have a third, okay, because I have C to E. Then if I go from E, I go up another third, F, G. So now I have E to G, which is another third. The reason why it's a 1, 3, 5 is because from this first note, this is a third, and from this first note, this other one is a 5. Okay, so to really understand what's going on here with the minor and major is that we look at the semitones. So if we're looking at the semitones, we're going to go up every possible note that we have, which is known as the chromatic scale. So piano is going to contain all the notes that we can play here on music, and we're going to take advantage of that by counting up the chromatic scale on the piano to help us understand this. So I'm going to start on the note C, and if I go from C to E, this is how I'm going to count it. I'm going to count my first note as my 0, so I'm not going to count that as a 1. I'm going to count the next possible note that comes after that as my 1, and then every other possible note that comes after that is then going to follow. So 2, 3, 4, until we land on the note that we want. We want the E. So we went from C, 1, 2, 3, 4. We landed on E, which is where we stop. So that means 4 semitones, and that means a major third. Then if we go from E and we want to go up to that next note, that G, we see that's a minor third, so let's count what those semitones are. We start on E, 1, 2, 3. So 3 semitones makes a minor third, while 4 semitones makes a major third. So in two different ways of explaining this, if we get a major third and we stack a minor third on top of that, we get a major triad. Or if we get 4 semitones and we put 3 semitones on top of that, then we have our major triad. Just two different ways of looking at it, which both are very helpful to understand what's going on here. Next, just one more in major. I'm going to do a G, a B, and a D. So how I got there is I went from my G, I went up that third again, G, A, B, that's a third. Then from B, which is my 1, 2, 3, to D, which is my other third. So now I have a major third from G to B, and then a minor third from B to D. So to count those semitones one more time, when you're counting semitones again, you don't start on that first note that you're starting from. So we're starting from G, we're going to start counting semitones on the next possible note. 1, 2, 3, 4, B, 1, 2, 3, to D. Okay, so now we have a minor triad. Try to guess what this is before I tell you the answer. So a minor triad is a minor third with a major third on top. So same thing, we get 2 different thirds. We get a D, we go up to the third, F, we go from F, we go up a third, we land on A, and the semitones are what makes it minor. The semitones in between these notes. So let's start on D, 1, 2, 3, lands us on F. 1, 2, 3, 4 from F lands us on A. Since we have those 3 semitones, minor third, and then 4 semitones, major third, that is what makes a minor triad. So in any case, any notes that you have, if there's a minor third on the bottom and a major third on the top, you have a minor triad. So just one more in E minor triad. Go from E, go up that third, we go to G, we go up that third, we land on B. We count the semitones in the middle. We have 1, 2, 3 from E to G, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 from G to B. And as you can see here, they're symbolizing the minor with M-I-N. So there is a symbol when it's minor. And as you can see on the right-hand section where my key is, I put a lowercase m, which also symbolizes the fact that it's minor. So when it's minor, it will be labeled. But as you may have noticed, and as you can see here, when it was major, it didn't say major. It just said C. So when it's not labeled, it automatically means that it's major, but major can also be labeled. It can be labeled with M-A-J, but just know that it can be labeled, but if it's not, that means it is major. Okay, next I have a diminished triad. Okay, so a diminished triad is interesting because I have a minor third and then another minor third on top of that. So it's just two minor thirds, and that makes a diminished triad. So quickly to count those semitones, 1, 2, 3 from B to D, 1, 2, 3 from D to F. So 3 semitones and 3 semitones. But as you can see, the semitones are what make it diminished. It's still 2/3 away from each other. So I still have a B, I built a third, D, I built another third, F. So it's still 2/3 stacked on top of each other. The only difference is those semitones in the middle of the notes. So as you can see here above the piano, they're labeling a B diminished as B-D-I-M, which D-I-M is an abbreviation for the word diminished. And on the right hand side with my key, you can see that I labeled diminished as a little like degree symbol. So you have like 70 degrees Fahrenheit. That degree symbol after the note is also a very common way to symbolize that this is a diminished chord. Next is augmented. So here's a C augmented chord. So all that this means is that we have a major third and another major third on top of that. Played together, augmented. As you can see, they label augmented as an AUG, which is an abbreviation for the word augmented. And on the right hand side where my key is, I put a plus sign, which is also a very common way of symbolizing that this is an augmented chord. So now that I went over the simple ones, I'm going to quickly go over some of these ones with more flats and sharps, just to kind of show you how simple it is. And nothing's really too difficult here. It's all the same thing, just using different notes is just the best way to look at it. So let's start with a D major triad, which is D, F sharp, and A. So F sharp, that may look a little intimidating with the sharp in there, but just know it's the same thing of a major third and a minor third stacked on top of each other, which is another way of just saying from that first note we have that 1, 2, 3, 4 semitone difference, and then from that next note we have that 1, 2, 3 semitone difference. So now we're going to have E flat, G, and B flat, which is going to make an E flat major triad, but it's just the same thing, just using some different notes here. We're going to have a 1, 2, 3, 4 from the first note to the second note, and then from the second note to the third note, a 1, 2, 3. Same thing when we do minor. I could do a C, E flat, and a G, and all that means is that from that first note to that second note, 1, 2, 3 semitones. From that second note to that third note, 1, 2, 3, 4 semitones. And now we have a minor triad. Okay, I think you get the point, but I'm just going to go over one for diminished and one for augmented in the same sort of style. Is that I have an E, a G, and a B flat. And all this means is that because it's diminished from that first note to that second note, 1, 2, 3 semitones. From that second note to that third note, 1, 2, 3 semitones. Okay, so then if I want to do an augmented triad, and I have the note D, F sharp, and A sharp, it's calling the A sharp a B flat, but those are the same thing. And if you look at my key there, it'll show that to you. So again, all this means is that from the first note to the second note, 1, 2, 3, 4 semitones. From the second note to the third note, 1, 2, 3, 4 semitones. Okay, so that was a little more like review, so let's actually dive into this a little further, and that is if we take a major chord, a C, E, and a G, that's major because we have a major triad on the top and a minor triad on the bottom. So if we take this middle note here, and we lower the middle note by 1 semitone to the left, if we're already in major, if we think about it, now this note to this note is going to be 3 semitones away, because we just lowered it by 1 semitone. So now from here to here is 3, but if you think about it, if here to here was already 3 semitones, E to G, now if I turn E to E flat and I move this over to the left one, now that's a bigger gap by 1, making this 4 semitones apart. Let's count it again. So from C, 1, 2, 3. Then if I count from that E flat, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm on G. So as you can see now it's a minor third with a major third on top, making it a minor triad from a major triad, just shifting that middle note to the left one or down 1 semitone. So next vice versa, which is probably pretty obvious, but if now we're from minor and we want to make it major, since we have a minor here and then we have a major here, if we take this middle note and we shift it one to the right, like the opposite of what we just did, okay, so let's look at it in context. C, E flat, G, we take it one to the right. Now we have a major third and a minor third. And now if we want to turn a minor into a diminished, so all we do is we take a minor triad and we think about what this means. It means we have a minor third, 3 semitones, and we have a major third, 4 semitones. So if we want to make this 3 semitones and 3 semitones, we could just take that last note and we could lower it by a semitone. So now we have D, F, and A flat. So now it's a D diminished triad. And that's because we have that minor third with that other minor third on top, because we changed that major third from a major third to a minor third. Next, if we have a major triad and we want to change it into an augmented triad, we just have to take that last note and raise it by a half step. So now we have what they're calling an A flat, but it's the same thing as G sharp. So we have a C, E, and G sharp, which means that we have a major third here, and we have a major third here, stacked on top of each other, C augmented. So I'm going to have a different video dedicated to this topic, but I kind of just want to briefly go over the fact that normally triads are built from a scale. So if you have a C major scale, which is another way of saying we have these white notes here that we're playing, those are the notes that make up a C major scale. And if we want to build a triad using those notes, we can just start building triads with those notes that we have. So let's look at how we do that. So we start in the note C, we just go up a third, we go up a third again, and now using the notes that are in C major, we just made a C major triad. So it's probably pretty obvious that C major is in the key of C major, but let's go over one more. If we have D, we go up a third, and we go up another third. Now we have a D minor triad, which is also in the key of C major, because it's built off the notes that make up C major. If that interests you, just stay tuned, and I'm going to have a video about that coming out very soon. If there's anything else that I'd like to add, it's probably the fact that a lot of people are going to call a fifth, like in this case, a C to a G is a fifth, a 5 chord. But it's really good to know that you're not really going to find other circumstances where you're going to play 2 notes and it's going to be thought of as a chord. So let's say major second, let's say major third, you know, and so on. But basically, you're not typically going to be thinking about that as a chord or that as a chord. Typically, when you're thinking about a chord, you're going to be thinking about 3 or more notes. And the most common ones are what I showed you in this video are the triads. But at the same time, 2 notes being played together are what are called dyads. D-Y-A-D. And what this means is that these are 2 notes being played together that can hint at or be a part of a chord. So like if I had a C and an E, well that's basically half of a C major chord right there. Okay, so that could be hinting at a C major chord if you just heard C and E. Just like if you heard that C, G, that 5, that could be hinting at a C major chord even though you don't have that E in there. And this basically goes with any note, so this is a little more complex, but let's say you had a C and a D, and you think, well that's just a major second, how does that relate to a chord? Well, it relates to a chord when you start stacking intervals that are upper extensions, which is going to be saved for another video. But if we go C, E, G, B, and we land on D, as you can see, I have a major 9 chord, because I stacked thirds until I got to that D note, which is my 9th. But if I remove every note besides C and D, as you can see, it's calling it a major second here, which I kind of agree with because you're just hearing the major second. But what I'm explaining is that a major second, especially in certain contexts, can be thought of as a dyad, sounding the notes that are found in a D major 9 chord, but you're just hearing the C and the D, which can be thought of as the 1 and the 9. That's it for this video. If you have any questions, leave in the comments and I will do my best to answer it. Thank you very much.